Strength and conditioning coach Brett Bartholomew here, and today we're going to talk about what really makes something the best MMA program you can follow. What's the best way to get prepared and go about training, whether it's in your fight camp or for the fight day in general. So whenever we use the term the best, the first thing to understand is there is no one magic formula that's going to work for everybody. I don't care whether you've seen a world champion repeat title defenses again and again and again, and you hear about some secret protocol they're using. What is the best is going to depend on the context, right? So your training level, like how long have you been training? How long have you actually been doing organized strength and conditioning? The equipment that you have, the nutrition protocols you follow, the amount of sleep you get at night. There's no one program, even if I take a program that a world champion several times over has followed, and I give that to you, there's no guarantee you're going to get those same results. So much of that comes down to context, but also coaching. Now, how you can create the best strategy for you is by understanding a lot of the training components that go into a smart, intelligent, adaptable, long-term program, specifically like Savage and Simple, the one I've created. So when we go into it, first you got to understand the role of buy-in. Everybody in your fight team has to be on the same page. Buy-in is simply comprised of commitment and trust. It's everybody having a trust of that we're doing what's best for the athlete, you and your fight preparation. There's no egos, there's no agendas. And for somebody to have commitment, trust, and buy-in, they've got to understand the long-term plan. We can't expect somebody to believe in what we're doing if we don't understand where they're trying to go. And so much of that comes down to the issue that fighters usually don't have a long-term plan. It's a copycat type of industry. You see what worked for one guy, somebody seems to be knocking a lot of people out, or somebody's really skilled at submissions and they do this kind of training protocol, and we try to mimic that. You're not them. Your fighting style isn't like theirs. They're going to have advantages and disadvantages that you don't have. You can't just copycat that. So you've got to create a long-term plan. How do you do that? Simple. You reverse engineer. We think, what are my needs? What are my wants? What's the time frame available? And that leads to our phase breakdowns. And when you think of phase breakdowns, whether it's phase 1, 2, and 3 like you see in Savage and Simple, or however you choose to organize it, you've got to start thinking, okay, at the beginning, how do I set my foundation? What is critical for the foundation? Do I lack strength? Am I out of shape? Is my body fat level too high because maybe my diet hasn't been locked in? Or maybe you're one of those few dedicated fighters that follows a 52-week fight plan and you're actually pretty locked in and you can get into some more high-level strength training, power training, and development. The point is if you break things down correctly, you have flexibility within that program. You might be able to manipulate and say, okay, I got sick here, but that's okay because we have this phase broken down where I know exactly the amount of total body workouts I need to do a week. I know how my body's been responding to conditioning, and I can tweak these things. So real life is going to happen. You're going to get sick. You're going to have family drama. You're going to have work drama. If you're following this rigid plan that every single thing has to be perfect, it's just not reality. That's not life, and that's not going to set you up over the long term. So when we look at phases 1 and 3, specifically in Savage and Simple, that's how we gear them up. Phase 1 is our foundation. We're lifting light to moderate loads for about average to high volumes. So you could look at 3 to 4 sets of anywhere of 5 to 10 repetitions. And again, the load, if you had to rank it 1 out of 10, 10 being absolutely maximally heavy, 1 being so light, it's basically body weight in bands. We're looking at loads around the 5 to 7 range. All right, specifically probably 6 to 7 for most of you that have done some strength training. You need to strain, but this isn't a maximal effort type thing. You're working on both bilateral movements, meaning 2 legs on the ground or 2 arms pushing or pulling, and unilateral, right? We're always trying to work on these imbalances and asymmetries while getting stronger and setting a foundation. Phase 2, and we talk about this in another why strength video that I put out and something that dives deeper, but now we're going to get a little heavier. We're really focused on the central nervous system, everything that sends that impulse to your muscles to strike quickly, forcefully, be able to generate that capacity. And then phase 3, ultimately marrying these two together. Hopefully we've shored up some imbalances. We've created the foundation of strength necessary for power. Now we can really focus on explosive movements, high intensity conditioning, being able to really push the levels of our physiological capacity so that when you go to your fight training, you're able to maximize your inputs and your outputs. Once we've gotten the phases down, of course, we've got to taper. And this is something that there's not going to be a perfect plan here too. You'll hear tons of crazy stuff out there about water cutting, food restriction. Guys, I'm telling you, you could do all this great. If you mess up the taper by doing something drastic before fight night or fight day, you are going to cancel out every single thing that made that program effective. Fights are won and lost well before they're in the octagon. They're lost oftentimes during the taper. And finally, that leads into ESD, because we don't want to just taper our nutrition and our strength training. It's a whole picture approach. It's part of that long-term plan, the great communication, and understanding when are times I need to ramp up my conditioning, my energy system development, and when are times where I need to keep it at more of a recovery pace. Because even though we like to, even though we're fighting, as fighters we're intense, every day cannot be red zone, red zone, red zone. Because what's going to happen is your body won't recover. You're not going to be able to output the amount of power that you need to. And now we're just compounding fatigue. So you're going through the motions, but you're continuously wearing your body down. Guys, there's a lot to digest here. If you want to learn more and you want to challenge yourself as a dedicated professional and gearing yourself with the best information you can, check out my free webinar below. It's 45 minutes, goes through all these components, and will help arm you with the information that you need to perform at your best.